Okay, number one.
Yes.
I'm just going to ask you all these questions.
Okay.
You mentioned in your sermon, this question is to me. Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's pretend you're me.
Okay.
We're we. You
So it's okay.
mentioned in your how about this? Your husband mentioned in his sermon.
Nice.
See how I did that?
That was great.
Your husband mentioned in his sermon on the law of pleasure that covenant renewal doesn't work when it's between either two takers or a giver and a taker.
Mm-hmm.
What's an appropriate way for a spouse to bring up that the bedroom experience is feeling a bit one-sided? How do we avoid a critical spirit rearing its ugly head and instead come from an affirming space when dealing with such a sensitive and powerful subject? So I don't know if this is from the husband or a wife.
Great question. And yes, you did mention in your sermon that it doesn't work very well when it's two takers or a giver and a taker because it's lopsided, which goes against, one of your last parts that you were talking about, the 7 things that we learned about sex and marriage. Obviously, the third one was sex cultivates servanthood. And then 4 was mutual. It's mutual, not manipulative. So it makes me think of both of those. This is a great question, though. And I think it comes down to the fact that like anything in marriage, and I think sex almost more, there has to be open lines of communication.
Yes.
You have to talk about it. We had this conversation with our city group the other night.
Yes.
It's so crazy. You'll talk about your finances. You'll talk about the children. You'll talk about schedules. You'll talk about
other people's kids.
Other people's problems. But when it comes especially to talking about sexual intimacy and how that's going in your marriage, I feel like that is something that people, for a host of reasons maybe, don't do well.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like this person is wanting to do that. And so I appreciate the heart here. They're wanting to avoid a critical spirit. They're wanting to be affirming. Whatever that quite means, but it is a sensitive topic, but also it doesn't need to be. It should be like, hey babe, I want to talk about our sex life. And if this is a wife saying that to a guy, I'm pretty sure he's going to be like,
dude's like, let's go.
What are we going to talk about?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's not going to be like, no, I can't talk about that right now. Not really interested. Not my favorite
just
subject.
Happens to be free right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess
let's assume it's from a woman. How would you encourage her to go about it with her husband?
Well,
and then
I think,
I'll answer it from the other source.
Okay. Well, I think what we've talked about before, just general communication guidelines. It's like try not to do it in wartime, right? Try not to do it like just when things have just wrapped up and you're like, by the way, I really was not pleased with this. I mean, I feel like there's a way to come about.
What things have wrapped up?
What? Anyway, so I'm just saying.
Has been completed.
Yes, correct. Thank you so much, Mr. McPherson.
My eyes killing me, by the way.
I think that
power through.
It's like any other thing we would encourage people in communication. It's like make sure there's a time when the two of you can talk about it. Maybe it's when you're on a wee retreat. Maybe it's more pressing than it. Maybe it needs to be a text message. Hey, babe, I really want to talk to you about something tonight after you get home. And here's whatever. I think. Obviously, it has to start with a wife. If this is a wife, she's coming. She's saying, I am not wanting to be critical. I am not wanting to be coming from a place where my heart isn't right. And she's prayed about it. She's talked to the Lord about it. I'm assuming all of that. And then I think you just bring it up. Hey, I feel like sometimes this is harder for me. I'd really enjoy this. Like start expressing your own needs because there are needs for a woman. And actually, sometimes women don't realize that you talked about. I mean, sex is for both the husband and the wife.
Yeah. And I think the husband can sometimes feel like him getting a performance review. Like, my husband's going to put a lot of stock in his ability, be the man.
Right.
And so you've always been very gentle with how you brought it up in our conversations early on.
Yeah.
And I always found it very attractive, or you'd be like, hey, like I want to do this or try that, or I love it when we do this. And it's like, oh, that's cool. And so
communication.
Yeah, communication, open communication. The other thing I would say, if you're a man, if this is a man asking the question, I would say, be open with your wife, talk to her about what you appreciate. But then it's not the whole. This isn't performance review or critical. This is like, hey, we're in this together, and it's fun, and it's awesome. I would enjoy trying this. What do you think?
Yes.
And then the other thing I would say is, we put regular times on the calendar to talk about finances, parenting, sex, and a host of things. So it wasn't situation specific. So we were going to talk about it on a regular basis. Whether we get to that spot and like, anything you want to talk about, I'm happy. Me too. Rock on. High five and keep moving. Or it's like, oh, actually, I've been wanting to talk about this or that. So when you set up regular times in your marriage, whether it's quarterly or monthly or however you want to do it, where you're going to go and you're going to talk about issues, it makes it more normal to bring those things up.
Yes.
And then you get in the habit of having meaningful conversations about important things, and it's not on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Now, once you've established that pattern and you have good communication skills in place and good agreements in place, then maybe you can be more, if you establish a regular, so for instance, if this is a wife, instead of saying, hey, if you feel like it would be too hard to approach the specific issue of sex, you can simply say, hey, could we set aside regular times to talk about all the things in our marriage? I would love that. I'd need that. That's going to benefit your whole marriage. If you're a husband and listening, you should take the initiative to set up regular times where I'm going to initiate, okay, how are we doing on finances? How are you feeling about where we're at as far as our investments in long-term security and grocery money?
Yeah.
How are we doing about our schedule? What's the pace of life right now? How are you doing as far as your energy goes? How are we doing with our kids? Any things I'm missing that I need to hear about? How are we doing in our physical relationship? Are you happy, satisfied? What new things would you like to try? What things would you like to do more of? When would you like to do them? When you're just initiating those conversations, then it's less of a awkward, I don't know how to say this, but I hate it when you do that.
Right.
And it's more of we're going to have an ongoing conversation so we can continue getting stronger in this area. So if you're a wife, maybe ask your husband, could we start having regular meetings to just talk about us?
Yes.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Because there's things I want to try, and there's things I want to do, and there's things I want to make sure we talk about. And the husband's like, that sounds great. So that would be my encouragement there.
That's good.
Hey, if you enjoyed that clip, you can click here to listen to the full podcast, or click in the link below and go wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're here, we're there, we're everywhere. Hopefully you can find us. And if you'd like some more free resources, you can head to StrongerManNation.com.